But I really think that the fact that he is being traded, he could have rejected the trade, but he didn't. I think the bigger trade that I had a problem with the Celtics was the trade they had with the Cavaliers. In the previous trade, they gave up Perkins, which you would think, okay, I'm okay with that. They still have Shaq. Jermaine O'Neal hasn't done anything this year, but he may play some meaningful minutes when the playoffs arrive. And they also had Sema Erden, who has been absolutely phenomenal, with off the bench for the Celtics. And they traded him along with Herangodi, which Herangodi's not done a whole lot for them, but they traded them to the Cavaliers for a second rounder, and I just thought it was a shame because really Sema Erden has been absolutely phenomenal for them, for the minutes he's played and for what he's brought to that team. I thought was just mystifying to trade your number one and number three centers, which basically leaves Shaq and his knees and his health problems at center.
This could turn into just a wash if Erden doesn't do anything. The Cavs were involved in another trade with the Clippers. Baron Davis and a 2011 first round pick were traded to the Cavs for Mo Williams and Jamario Moon. I feel really bad for Baron Davis. Truthfully, this wasn't his fault. The Clippers owner Sterling just did not like Baron Davis for whatever
No,
reason.
he didn't.
And Davis and Griffin were clicking. They had a good 1-2 punch going on there.
and
So
and Davis has played very very well since he came back from his injury, and it's really for me it was just one of those moves that it doesn't make sense. Cleveland's not going to do anything with him. I mean, other than absorb his contract. They get a first round from the Clippers, which could be a decent pick, but it's not going to be anything spectacular. And in return, the Clippers get Mo Williams and Jamario Moon. I mean, really? Is that going to improve your team? Is that going to give you a playoff team? It's not. And Mo Williams has had a lot of injury problems. He's not the kind of distributor you want with Griffin because you want this to be the Griffin show. I just think it was more Davis had issues and they didn't want to deal with it anymore, so they shipped him off. But I can't agree with this trade.
well,
Um,
the way I look at this trade, Jamario Moon was taken because he's in his final year. So obviously he's not going to come back next year because they have a team option for him. Mo Williams though can come back to maybe bite them. He has back-to-back player options at $8.5 million each. I believe if he picks up that player option next year, they will trade him. Just because I think this is going to be turned over to Eric Bledsoe, and I just think Mo Williams was brought in to be a backup for one season, and then just a trade asset or cap space clear. That I mean, I don't understand why you get rid of Davis for all this, but then again, Donald Sterling is like the Al Davis of the
it,
NBA.
it was an awful trade all around, and I feel really bad for Baron Davis because I've really felt for him in the past couple of years. He keeps looking for teams who can get him to the promised land, and every single time they the floor drops out from under him. He goes to the Clippers and they trade Brand. I thought that was one of the most devastating trades you could possibly do. What I'm going to bring up is Landry for Marcus Thornton. I don't know. It just seemed to be kind of a great thing for New Orleans, a odd choice for the Kings, and financially, again, Cuban had issues with this trade as soon as it was announced.
Yeah, this was obviously the most controversial trade, at least among NBA. I would assume NBA owners, because I'm sure others had a problem with this other than Cuban. But as everyone knows, Cuban is basically the only one that will speak his mind. The Hornets took on $2 million extra, and that's what Cuban is upset with. The NBA owns this team, which means each owner owns 1/29th of that franchise, and he's upset because they're letting them make trades that push them into luxury cap when they're not even owned by just one individual. It,
Exactly.
and I do find a problem with that. I want to know who made these moves because I would assume owners generally have the final say on a trade. So, did they go to all 29 owners and take a vote to say this is the deal? How did this trade come together?
It
That
it
to me it doesn't make any sense.
Frankly, I think New Orleans becomes a lot better team because of it. I think it's a fantastic move for them, but I do not understand how it makes any legitimate sense. And I can't believe that the owners would be okay with them dipping into the reserves when they're being owned by the league. I would have a problem with that too. However, I think the Landry move does make Hornets a lot tougher. Gives them a guy at the 3 and the 4 spot, gives them a rebounder, and gives them a guy who generally is going to work his butt off. I think he really is what they need. I like Thornton. I thought he played really, really well when he was getting meaningful minutes. He hasn't got meaningful minutes this year, and shipping him for Landry is an absolute steal.
Yeah, the Kings had to get rid of their front court. It was pretty full, and Landry's contract was expiring. They were looking to get him out. He's going to be a really good sixth man for the Hornets. Come in, take over for David West. So I do like it for the Hornets. I don't think it's not one of those moves that's gonna push them farther in the playoffs, but it at least gives them a little more stability, and especially if they can win him over and maybe bring him back. The last one that we saw was the Bulls and Raptors. The Bulls trade James Johnson to the Raptors for a 2011 first round pick. Sadly, I'm not really sure. I know who James Johnson is. I don't know what he does. I don't know why the Raptors want him for a 2011 pick.
He hasn't seen meaningful minutes. He was a guy who was supposed to come in, be athletic, be, all this stuff, and really didn't show up. But the Bulls managed to get something out of him, as they seemingly, tend to do. I mean, just moving his contract, and basically they got, they rented him for 2 years and got a first round out of it. So there were a couple players who I was surprised were not traded. Some of the notable ones, Rip Hamilton, obviously didn't get moved from Detroit. Tayshaun Prince, there was a lot of talk about them getting moved, and in the long run, I heard that Cleveland was going to take on Hamilton's contract and basically buy him out, but they could not come to agreement with Hamilton on the buyout amount. Prince had a lot of interest from the Mavs. Mavs decided not to trade him. J.R. Smith didn't get moved.
Jameson didn't get moved. Antoine Jameson.
Yeah.
Nobody would take him.
Golden State tried, but they couldn't get it done.
Like we said earlier, Yao Ming wasn't moved. I thought Utah, after they got rid of Darren, would have gotten rid of a couple others. There were some interesting talks about Millsap and Jefferson possibly being dealt. I know there was a lot of talk on Twitter about Pacers possibly trying to get Millsap, which I think would have been a pretty good deal. When we talk about the Pacers, we probably had the biggest folly in the fact that they apparently had a deal with Memphis to send Josh McRoberts and a first round pick for OJ Mayo. There's some pros to this trade, and then there's some cons to this trade. But then, I'm sitting on Twitter and I'm looking at all this, and then all of a sudden it comes out that they missed a trade deadline. They got it in at 3:01. That was when the call was made. So obviously the first thing you think of is how dumb is Larry Bird to not get this trade done. Then it comes out that Memphis starts blaming the Pacers for everything. And then you hear, okay, the Pacers wanted either Arthur or Randolph along with Mayo. And I don't know who else they would have traded, but obviously it was going to be more than just McRoberts and a first for those two. And then there's the Hornets coming out of nowhere being part of this deal with Brandon Rush going to the Hornets. Haven't seen anything about who the Hornets were going to send.
The biggest issue with this whole trade was somebody opened their mouth and said this trade was happening. Number one, there are a lot of issues with this trade. The first one being McRoberts has been playing fantastically. Pacers have two legitimate, if you want to count Solomon Jones, 3 power forwards, but really they were kind of lacking at the big man position. So getting rid of a live wire like McRoberts was a little bit questionable. Giving up a first round, but you're getting OJ Mayo, who plays the position where the Pacers have the biggest depth. I understand, with the injury that we had with Dunleavy, that screwed up a lot of the possible trade details. When we found out about Rush, it made a little bit more sense moving Rush with Mayo possibly coming in. But I just don't understand, with all the expiring pieces, TJ Ford, Foster, Solomon Jones, Dunleavy, why they couldn't have gotten a deal done with somebody. They made a move, and the move they needed was to get a little bit bigger and they didn't do it. And it was a really, really frustrating offseason for Pacers fans because OJ Mayo would have given them a little bit of star power, but again, he's another head case. We don't need another head case.
But the thing I wouldn't have liked about OJ Mayo coming is I believe that they need to be playing Danny Granger and Paul George on the floor at the same time. 2 or 3, it doesn't matter who's in what. I believe it needs to be Collison, George, Granger, Hansborough, and Hibbert. That needs to be the starting 5 for the rest of the year. The problem with the Pacers is they don't have a consistent starting 5. Jim O'Brien and now Frank Vogel continue to mess with the lineup. Why can they not just settle on 5 guys to even start 3 games in a row? It's just like, make up your mind. This is not that hard. It's like, I don't care if these guys are showing up in practice. Brandon Rush isn't going to be back next year. Dylan Levy's not going to be back next year. Josh McRoberts, I think he'll be back unless someone offers him some outrageous money because the guy has played his butt off this year. And I believe he's become a true fan favorite. He's been basically the only exciting thing other than the emergence of Paul George. I don't understand. Like you said, OJ Mayo would have clogged up that shooting guard spot, and OJ Mayo would have expected to start.
And Dante Jones has really emerged. Brandon Rush had a spectacular dunk, and I think Paul George needs the minutes. I like the idea of getting more star power, and I think at this point the Pacers do need to look for a substantial upgrade at the shooting guard and power forward positions, possibly getting a little bit better at the point guard position. But I really, really think that the OJ Mayo move wasn't a good move. I'm very happy it didn't go through.
I think if they could have brought Zach Randolph over with OJ Mayo and got rid of Rush, I would have been a lot happier with the trade.
It would have been the steal of the day. But quickly, we gotta close this up. But who is your winner and loser of the draft deadline?
I think the winner of this deadline going forward is going to be the Knicks. Just from the aspect of they got their guy, they got Carmelo. Now they have the pieces in place to bring in future stars. They have what they need to bring in a Darren Williams or a Chris Paul in 2012.
And your loser?
I guess the Bobcats easily. It seems like Jordan doesn't know what he wants. It seems like he doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, he kind of proved that with the Wizards when he ran that team into the ground pretty easily and pretty fast. I find it hard to see what his long-term goal is here because nobody's going to want to come sign free agent-wise with him. Nobody good. You're not going to get a Darren Williams or a Chris Paul or a Dwight Howard to come play for you. And, yeah, you're stockpiling draft picks, but you've also proven that you suck at drafting. So what good are those picks?
I would have to say probably my winners. I'm going to go with Thunder. I can't say enough about how much I love the Thunder's move to get bigger, to get stronger, to get more intense because they are, it's a move that says we're ready to go. And I think I like the swagger that comes with that. I really think it was an impressive move for them. For losers, I have a big issue with the teams that could have done something and didn't. The Pistons obviously have been treading water for a while, have a lot of players that need to be moved or need to do something because it's a team that really needs something to happen because it's been pretty dismal for the past bit. And the other thing is, I didn't like Houston's moves. I don't see how Houston improved. I do like the idea that Chase Bunger might get some more minutes because I love watching that guy play. But there's so many teams out there that could have, swung for the fences in this draft deadline and didn't do anything. And I was really disappointed. I really hoped the Pacers would have done something. I can't say that I blame them for not making a move because they've been clicking really solidly recently. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that, it's going to make them better or worse. I think they're going to keep going to that 8th spot.
All right. Well, that's been our trade recap, and we'll have some more interesting stuff. Obviously, we can now kind of get away from the NBA for a month or so, unless something big happens. In the next 2 weeks, we have conference tournaments. The next 3 weeks, we have the NCAA tournament starting. So there will be a lot of talk going on. I guess with that, we'll just close this show. So thanks for listening. This has been Sports Chat. I've been your host, Matt Muncy.
This is Brock Stafford.